It is 9:02 a.m. on June 13th, 2012, and this meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board is now in session. Ms. Rowe, are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Item 3, adoption of the minutes for the CRRMA Board meeting of May 23rd, 2012. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 4 was an update and presentation from the America's Gateway Builders on Loop 375 at I-10 America's Interchange Project, but I believe that item may be deleted. Is that correct, Mr. Tejas?
Yes, sir. Ray Mateus, Executive Director. We were informed late this morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, that AGB was not going to be present today. Apparently, they've been very busy building the interchange, so we'll reschedule that. As you know, we've asked them for a quarterly report, so we'll have them at our next meeting.
You know, just as a update, we are looking at January as a substantial completion date, so we've only got approximately 6 months before substantial completion is moving forward. We've got those additional 3 direct connectors that we are currently working on, west-north, west-south, and east-south, and so we'll kind of see where, so there's a lot of changes happening out on that interchange, if you all have seen. Raymond this morning showed me the latest newsletter for the project. They've made tremendous progress out there, and it really is quite a cornerstone signature project for this community. So,
And each of you have the latest newsletter in your packets.
Item 5, presentation and status report on Spur 1966. I love that name, by the way. The Schuster Connection project by the Texas Department of Transportation. Mr. Calvo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Eduardo Calvo with TxDOT. We're going to give you a very brief status report on Spur 1966. Actually, here with me is Jesus Heredia. Jesus has been working on the Spur and Border Highway West and the I-10 CD lanes. As you know, those are the big projects that we are currently developing, and he's really the one that's been taking care of the day-to-day activities. So a lot of the success of the project so far, is due to his work. So this is Jesus.
Jesus, good morning.
Good morning, Chair McLaughlin and board members. What I want to do for you this morning is provide you just a brief update on the Spur 1966 project. We're currently in the process of finalizing the preliminary engineering layouts or the schematic layouts. We're at 90% complete at this point in time. The 90% has been provided to Mr. Mike Rutt from Jacobs in order for him to start looking at the design and initiate the PS&E package or the plan specification and estimate package to be submitted for construction. We've just completed our public meeting as of last month. We've gotten very positive comments and feedback from the community, very little negative comments as far as impacts to the community, or at least as far as the construction sequence is concerned. We've tried to address as many comments as possible also with regards to the roundabout design. I know that some issues have come up as far as security or safety features to it, but we've done some analysis on it, and at this point in time we feel that the roundabout on Schuster and the new Spur 1966 connection is, as far as cost benefit is concerned, the best possible design at this point in time. We are hoping to have the environmental document complete before the end of the year, so as we can move forward with the PS&E package. We're looking approximately at possibly $60 million construction cost at this time. We will probably refine that cost as design comes to fruition during the PS&E process. Aside from that, I think that's all I have for you at this time. Any questions from the board with regards to the design or the project status?
So we're at 90% complete on the schematic, which is about 30% of the design. So the design be complete around November timeframe, is that correct?
That is what we're hoping for. I think Mr. Micro would probably give you a better answer for that one. I don't know if that's what we're still. That's what we're shooting for. Yes, sir. We're still looking for a January letting. That's what we're aiming for, sir.
And with a January letting, what would be, what would we be looking at as an estimated completion date for this project?
As far as construction, we're still shooting for 2014, possibly the summer 2014 for completion. We're looking anywhere from 12 to 18 months on construction time.
So we're looking at basically 2 years from today having that spur completed and in service and ready to go.
That is the plan, sir, yes.
That's excellent. I have to make a quick comment. I didn't make the public outreach on the Spur 1966, but I made it out to the collector and distributor project. I thought that was extremely well run. It's a tremendous project that TxDOT has in place for what they're looking at, how they're redesigning some of the access onto the I-10 and some of the frontage roads. And, so great job to you and the team as far as how that was handled, and thought it was terrific.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any questions on Spur 1966? Jesus, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Item 6, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to issue a reimbursement to the El Paso Water Utilities for asbestos pipe removal and disposal services in the amount of $16,260 in relation to I-10 at Loop 375, America's Interchange Project. Mr. Tejas?
Raymond Tejas again, Executive Director. You may recall this item was on our last agenda. We had to delete it to resolve some last-minute questions that we had. Let me give you a brief summary of what the item is. Through the Americas Interchange, we have a comprehensive development agreement, the CDA, between the developer and ourselves. That CDA dictates the relationship between the parties, and it identifies the responsibilities of each party. One of the responsibilities is to deal with hazardous materials found on site. When those hazardous materials are disturbed through the project, then the Regional Mobility Authority has retained those responsibilities for the removal and disposal of those hazardous materials. So what you see before you here is item number 6, is the reimbursement for the removal and disposal of asbestos pipes that are part of the water utility system. So as a related matter, with projects that are located or tie into an interstate, all of the utilities on that project are 100% reimbursable to the utility. So in this case, what you have is the water utility coming in, removing the asbestos and disposing of it properly, and then billing us for it. So that's what you see before you. So essentially, the water utilities has incurred this cost in the removal and disposal of the asbestos. The CDA requires us to cover it as opposed to the developer, so that's why you see this item before you. So subject to your questions, that's all I have.
And this was done a couple months ago?
This was done actually quite some time ago.
So they're actually looking to get paid, aren't they?
Yes, I think they're ready.
Yeah,
Just so you know, we have a contingency fund, fairly large, built into the Americas project, and I believe this will be hitting that contingency fund. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we have the funds available for instances like this. This is a small amount, and we're fortunate that we've only had, a small sidewalk issue and I believe an access ramp that have hit that contingency fund. So a small amount so far, in addition to what we're looking at here. Any questions regarding this?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to commence the procurement process for the selection of a systems integrator for the Loop 375 Cesar Chavez Border Highway Managed Lanes project. Mr. Tejas?
So as we discussed at our last meeting, the Chavez project is moving along. We had Mr. Fagan in to break down the toll collection process and really kind of outline the integrator roles and responsibilities. So what you have before you today is really a general request for authorization for the executive director and staff to begin the procurement process for a systems integrator. What we're looking at currently in terms of a schedule is that the and this is an RFP, it's a request for proposals, it's not a request for qualifications. The RFP would be released in late July. We believe the vendor could be selected by mid-October with a contract executed, or at least approval for the contract execution in November. So we're moving very quickly. And by way of background, actually, let me talk a little bit about the funding source. As you'll recall, we entered into a project development agreement with TxDOT, whereby they provided $2.4 million to us to complete the due diligence required for pursuing the Chavez toll systems. Part of that 2.4 also covers the procurement process that we're discussing today. So that's all I have for you.
Just question, did you say staff?
I meant consultants. Right.
He's going out spending again. Thank you.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to commence the procurement process for the environmental and schematic phase of the Americas Interchanged Managed Lanes project. Mr. Tejas?
Okay, this is also an interesting one. This one, I am also requesting general authorization from the board to begin the procurement process. This procurement process is a little bit different. We're looking for a professional engineering firm to provide environmental and preliminary engineering services. Ultimately, what we're really looking for is the completion of the environmental documentation as well as the schematic, which, as mentioned, is essentially generally 30% of the design. This one we've discussed a couple of times. It's the Americas Managed Lanes segment, which is the connection from Cesar Chavez at roughly the Zaragoza port of entry up to just short of the Americas interchange, so about a 3 to 4 mile stretch where we would actually be placing managed lanes to the inside. So this is one of the very early steps. We will, because we're looking for professional engineering firms, this will be a two-step process, including an RFP, a request for qualifications process, followed by a request for proposals. So the RFQ, request for qualifications, we believe can be released in late June. We look to shortlist in late July. The request for proposals we intend to release as we shortlist, which would be in late July. And we intend to select in mid-September, and hopefully we can have a contract executed by mid-October. So we also are on a quick timeline for this one as well. At the completion of this project then, or this phase of the project, we will have a schematic and approved environmental, at which point then we can move forward to the next step, which would be design and construction. So, subject to your questions, that's all I have on this item.
Any questions from the board? There's a move to approve. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 9, presentation, discussion, and action on the financial report for fiscal year 2012 to date. I believe we are going to delete that item. Is that correct, Mr. Tejas?
Yes, sir. I'd request a motion to delete.
Is a motion required to delete that item?
I'd prefer it,
Okay.
just for procedural.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 9 is deleted. Item 10, presentation, discussion, and action on the quarterly report by the CRRMA's General Engineering Consultant regarding the use of local resources.
And actually on this one, if I could, before we introduce Mr. Pete Jacobs from our GEC team, I would mention that I provided to each of you an updated sheet for the GEC's presentation. And really the difference between the sheet that you were just handed is that it has a new table at the bottom. So when you're looking at the tables, the table on top identifies all of the GEC expenditures through April of 2012. The new table, which is below, really identifies the activity in the last quarter. So it's February, March, and April of 2012. So this provides the quarterly report for you. So with that, I'd ask Mr. Jacobs to provide an update.
Mr. Jacobs, good morning. And just for the board's review, this is what we discussed a few months ago in regards to addressing some of the concern with the GEC dollars, breaking out how those dollars are spent, a combination of local and non-local, and I believe what we did agree to at that time was we were going to basically tabulate all the dollars up to a set point, which was April, and then we were going to provide a quarterly report to the board in regards to the use of local resources every 3 months that Atkins was going to drive for us and present. So, Mr. Jacobs, good morning.
Pete Jacobs, GEC for the RMA. Again, what we have here on the overhead, just so we can show it to everybody, is the second chart that was added. Is that
Not quite up yet. Hold on a second, Pete. There it is.
okay? It's like Raymond was saying. The top chart is to date, everything to date, and then what we did. The bottom table is the delta for this time frame. What's happened since the last presentation is we've had 3 new work authorizations that have 2 of them have started, and they are the west to north and west to south designs. So you'll notice that there has been a slight change of the overall local to non-local. In this case, we have used the local resources that are on the team to their utmost, and then we had to go other places due to the time frames. We're trying to get these designs done in a very, very short time. So we've had to use some other offices besides just the El Paso group. So that's been one of the major changes in this one. If I'm not mistaken, one of the designs is complete, or it has been submitted, and the second design is very well along. And so this should tie down a little bit here pretty soon. Then we do have this other design that was just initiated this last week for the east to south. The other changes, though, overall, we're still right where we were previously, where our local participation is slightly higher than the non-local. When it comes to, it's 51-49, and that's what we were last time. The majority of the work is still being done on the Americas project, and that is vastly local folks. So if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Actually, if I could interject also, for the board's information, recently I met with the Council of Engineering Companies, the CEC, the local chapter, and through our discussions, we agreed to meet again to go through this table and make sure that they're comfortable with the methodology that we use to develop this. As you know, there's always a question when you try to define a firm as to whether they're local or non-local. And what this board has directed is to really look for the local impact more so than just a definition of a firm. So what you see in our tables and what we've discussed in the past is really a breakout. Like, for example, when you look at Atkins, you have a local component and a non-local component. And the easiest way to explain that is through Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs is an Atkins employee, which is obviously an international firm, but Mr. Jacobs lives in El Paso. He pays property taxes and pays vehicle registration. He has the local impact that we're all, I think, really looking for. So that's how you see the breakout. One of the things that I committed to do with the CEC is to take this to them and really kind of break down and explain the methodology, make sure they're comfortable with it, and where they aren't, see if we can't find a happy medium so that we're not just presenting a report that nobody believes in. So I've committed to that, and in fact, I'm waiting to meet up with the CEC so that everybody's comfortable with these quarterly reports. Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Obviously, the first 4 months of April, the trend's gone the other way, away from local. Is there some reason for that?
That's because that design, we've asked for this design to be escalated, and to do that, we've used the local resources as much of the local folks that we have on the team. They're all fully busy, so they're over capacity. So we're having to go to these other offices to get this done in the time frame that's been requested.
As long as we have a good reason for doing it, because obviously the trend's going the other way, and fairly soon we're going to be, the majority of the work and the money we're spending is going to be non-local as opposed to local.
Correct, but those will be coming to an end here in the next month, maybe two, and then the Americas project still will be chugging right along.
Okay. And Mr. Marcus, on that point, those projects that had the expedited timeline, that's what raised the local issue in the first place, because that was their concern.
Yeah. Raymond, without getting into semantics, I know that, for example, Brock and Bustillo, ECM, Suzanne Michaels, and Flores, they have offices here. Can that be said of AIA Engineers and Jacobs?
Yes, they have offices here.
They do. So you hire locally, but you also have a local presence as far as the corporate entity is concerned?
Yes, and one of the things that we'll be discussing with the CEC is, for example, Jacobs has a very small office, but Atkins has a larger office. So how do you break that out? How do you break that contribution out?
It's okay. I don't want to happen like with Steve Ortega, when from City Council went to look at one of these guys that was doing work from out of town, and really it was just an executive suite.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to start playing games with the process. You either have an office or you don't have an office.
Yeah,
Actually, I'm sorry, just to interject one last time. To get away from that, that's why we're focusing on local impact as opposed to how long has your office been open and that sort of thing. Because that, to me, that's a losing proposition for everybody trying to define what local is. Right. Instead of that, we're looking to how many employees live here and have a local impact with the salaries. So that's why we're focused on that as opposed to the office and how big is it. And
right. The only reason I brought it up is that, I think the city finally defined what local is. And one of the criterion is that they have to have a local office with X number of employees. So I'm not sure we don't need to adhere to that, but I wasn't sure we ever adopted that guideline or not.
No, in fact, we went the opposite way.
Okay.
Again, we went towards local impact. So in my mind, it doesn't matter if you have an office with one employee. That one employee who lives here in El Paso has a local impact, so that local impact should be calculated, in my mind. And I think that's the direction that I've gotten from the board. Now, obviously, we can certainly revisit that.
I don't know, the board can speak for themselves.
Yeah,
I think
I have a comment too. And Raymond, I really appreciate that because there was a concern by several of the firms and the board took immediate action. And Mr. Jacobs, I really appreciate these reports. I mean, just the fact that we're looking at this, that we're taking action, that we're defining it on our own terms, and we're working with these firms to have them feel comfortable with the way that we do business. And I think that's really important. And we're trying to get it right. So that's important.
You know, speaking of that, I have met with 10 other firms since the last meeting, or since the last time we brought this up. We've met, gathered their information like we told everybody's going to do, in ways of gathering possibilities for the team growth. So like I said, I've met with 10 other firms already, and found out some new activities, new capabilities locally that I was not aware of. So it's been great.
But there's one thing I'm not quite clear on. Why is it that the local firms could not respond so quickly on what you needed in terms of the design for the Americas project? Why did we have to go out of town for the time?
I can probably answer that to a certain extent, Pete, if you want. When we had all of a sudden kind of a compressed timeline for, let's say, the west-north or the west-south, the designer that had already designed the first three or the schematic for the first three already understood the schematics and the design, and so to plug him in for the additional ones, he had the ability to adapt very quickly and meet the timelines that we were told that we needed to have with potentially an August letting. And in consulting with the GEC, really it was our call, and we felt like that was the very best choice to get this done because we were told it had to be done by these particular dates. And I had a concern, I think we had a concern as a board that, with the compressed timeline, that's how it needed to get done.
Yeah, and that member was already on the team, was already part of the GEC team, so it already helped. The other thing is, this was a structural type facilities, and that is a much more specialized. So there's not as many firms. There's a few firms locally, but they weren't necessarily on the teams. But we've been trying to get, if we could have gotten them on board, we could have or should have maybe. But it's time to get the contract going, getting them up to speed when we just didn't have the time.
And basically for us to procure was basically a notice to proceed to Atkins as opposed to going out with an RFP or an RFQ and then that process. So based on the timelines of these projects, that's just how it needed to happen.
But they will change going forward, right?
Well, and what we had committed to and have always stuck to is when the project allows for it in terms of timing, we will go out with a public procurement process, just like we're doing with the Chavez system integrator as well as the Americas Managed Lanes environmental and preliminary engineering. So when the project does not require us to drop everything and start design immediately, this is the process that we'll use, the procurement.
And what we're really trying to come up to this, whether this is the final design of what it's going to look like, this may be tweaked. Local participation could go down depending on how we tweak it or how we look at it. The key is to come up with a model that we all understand, that sets the benchmark going forward. And then from there, we can determine on a quarterly basis going forward how well we are utilizing local resources on RMA projects. So the first point is get the numbers to a point that we all agree that these are the correct way to allocate the numbers. Come up with a percentage, and then use that percentage as a benchmark to go forward. And that's really kind of the start of this process. So, hopefully, Raymond, you get some feedback. Some of the local engineers give you some information in regards to how they think we should break this down. We may need to tweak it as a board ourselves, make some general administrative oversight in terms of how we want to do this, and then from there on, it's done like that every quarter. So provide your feedback to Raymond, and this is really just a starting point. Any questions for Mr. Jacobs?
No, I think that this is a perfectly good point of how important this subject is to us. I mean, we spent more time this morning talking about this than anything else, so I think we need to note that going forward. Thank you.
Vicki, thank you very much.
Move to adjourn, unless we're going to executive session.
No, the only thing that I would mention is that, and I mentioned this to each of you at our last meeting, we'll be moving to paperless agendas at our next meeting. We've got a template established. Well, essentially what we'll have is we'll turn on each of the monitors in front of you, and we'll have the agenda with hot links for each of the backup items as well. So we will be paperless next month, unless you let me know and you'd like for me to run a hard copy. I can provide that to you as well. So with that, then I would ask for
Move to adjourn again.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned at 9:27 a.m.